Hey everyone, Smite Pants Chess here again. We've got Leela Chess 0 playing Stockfish in the CCC11 finals. In this game Leela was white, Stockfish is black, and the opening goes as follows. It was e4, e5 in this one, knight to f3, knight c6, and bishop to b5, and black played knight to f6, and this is actually the end of the book move. So we actually get a Berlin defence. Leela castles now, and black takes on e4, with Leela playing rook to e1, hitting the knight, and the knight drops back to d6, attacking the bishop, but now Leela takes on e5 with the knight. So black's structure is super solid at the moment. Obviously black can't take this bishop off because then we come knight takes c6 with check, and then the only way to block it is obviously with bishop to e7, and then white can take the queen off. So in this position black plays bishop to e7 and white retreats their bishop back to f1. This is our standard theory, and then black takes on e5, Leela recaptures and black castles. Leela plays knight to c3 to develop, Stockfish plays knight to e8, and Leela plays knight to d5, so attacks the bishop on e7 with two pieces. The bishop moves to d6, attacking the rook, and Leela drops their rook back to e1. And Stockfish now attacks the knight with tempo, c6. The knight is forced to move backwards, and Stockfish actually has a choice here. In the game they went bishop to e7. I was thinking bishop c7 may have been slightly better, just because after white plays, let's say, knight to f5, they look okay with d5, and maybe even black can play queen d6 at some points if they take the knight off. Play could continue though, knight to e7, king h8, takes, and this has actually occurred in some games already. So of course bishop c7 is playable, but Stockfish preferred bishop to e7. So Leela starts developing with c4, sort of hindering black from playing d5. Black plays knight c7 though to reinforce d5, and Leela plays d4, and Stockfish does play d5 to get the bishop out. So Leela captures this pawn. The knight takes, and Leela recaptures, and black recaptures. So both sides have got an equal structure and equal pieces. So it's looking very drawish already. Leela plays bishop to f4 to develop, bishop to e6 from Stockfish, queen to b3, attacking the b7 pawn, and Stockfish defends with queen to d7. And here Leela played bishop to b5, attacking the queen. And Stockfish does have to be a bit careful, because if they play a move like queen to c8, white can play rook a(c1) and attack the queen. And this is looking rather scary for black, because then they've got to play queen d8 to sidestep it, and white can infiltrate with bishop to c7, queen c8, and white may even have some queen g3 ideas here, because then they can have a discovered attack against the queen and threaten mate if they retreat the bishop to e5. Of course black can play g6 here, but then white can play moves like h4 and prepare for a kingside attack. So actually white is probably better in this position with more dynamic pieces. Stockfish didn't play queen c8 though, he played queen to d8, and Leela just drops the bishop back to d3, so now again attacking this pawn on b7. Stockfish plays queen to d7, and instead of repeating moves Leela plays rook to e2. Stockfish plays a6, and then Leela doubles rooks on the e-file. So at the moment white may have a slight edge, but this is a very close game, and it's too close to call at the moment. It's incredibly drawish, but we'll see later on how white manages to win this game. Black played g6, Leela plays h3, so both sides giving space for the kings. Stockfish gains an open file, Leela plays bishop h6, the rook moves, bishop c2, bishop f6 attacking the pawn. Leela defends, and then bishop g7 from Stockfish. A trade occurs, and queen to d2 from Leela. I'm just going through these moves relatively quickly because it's very drawish at the moment, and the best part of the game occurs later on. h5 from black, a3 from white, queen c6 attacking the bishop. The bishop goes to b3, queen b5 again attacking the bishop. Leela retreats. Black plays bishop to d7, and rook takes. Rook is played, rook takes rook, rook takes, and then bishop takes. So all the rooks have just been traded off, And after queen b4, black is given an option here. They could have swapped queens as well with a takes b4, and I think maybe Stockfish should have gone in for this and doubled white's b pawns. Then they've definitely secured a draw at least. But in the game, Stockfish actually played queen c6, and after queen c3 they did trade now with b takes c3. Now we're into an endgame with the same coloured bishops. However, all of black's pawns are on white squares. So how much of a hindrance will this be for black? And how much would this be advantageous to white? Because white could use their bishop to start taking or harassing some of these pawns. The point is that white's got most of their important pawns on dark squares, so there's no way for their bishop to attack them. So we're in for a very interesting endgame, see if black can defend this position. Bishop c6 from Stockfish. Leela plays h4, again putting another pawn on a dark square. f6 from Stockfish. And now Leela gets the king up to h2. The king goes to f7 for black. Bishop to b3. King e6. Bishop d1 and bishop to e8. And then Leela hits in with g4. So Leela's trying to create an outside pass pawn with their h pawn and run that up the board. But essentially, white's just trying to trade a few pawns and try and get black into some sort of difficult position where they can zugzwang them. And we'll see this in a few moves. So h takes g4 is played, bishop takes g4 by Leela. If f5, then I think white just drops the bishop back to f3. And again we see black's pawns are all on white squares. Play could continue bishop a4, but after king g3, bishop to b3, h5, takes, and king f6, king f4, bishop a4, bishop e2, and bishop c2. We're actually in a very drawn endgame, and I think black may be able to hold on in this position, so maybe black should have gone in for f5 in this particular position. But the outcome of the game was very different. So king d6 is played by Stockfish, f4, and now black does play f5. So it looks as though black secured everything and locked the king down and the bishop down for white. So bishop goes back to d1, the king goes to e7. This looks really safe for black, to be honest. But actually, Leela plays a very clever move now. She plays the move h5. The point is, if g takes h5, white can play king to g3, after king f6, play king h4, and white's going to take this pawn on the next move, and there's nothing black can do about it. If a5, then bishop takes h5. And if black takes this bishop off, it's just winning for white, because the king's going to infiltrate. So if bishop b5, white can play bishop f3 and bishop c6. But now white's king is going to start coming in and hassling black's position. So if you just go back to the game after h5, Stockfish actually played king f7, Leela played king to g3, king g7, and now king h4, king h6, and Leela takes his pawn off and the bishop recaptures. But now it's all a matter of technique from Leela, and it's going to try and zugzwang black. So again, black's pawns are still on white squares, and white's mission now is to use their bishop to slowly but surely limit black's bishop, and we'll see how she does this. So she starts off with bishop to a4. So this stops black moving their bishop to e8 because they've just covered this diagonal. Black plays b5 though, and then white plays bishop c2. So white has actually forced a weakness from black by them playing b5. This a6 pawn now is susceptible to an attack, and if white can somehow maneuver their bishop round, say this way, to the back rank of black, they've got a good chance to win the game. And believe me, this is very achievable. So I'll just demonstrate how weak black's position is. For instance, if they play a5 here, bishop d3 just wins because white's attacking two pawns. And if they play king g7, white will infiltrate with king to g5. And now we'll win this f-pawn. So back to the game. Black played bishop h7, defending f5, and Leela played bishop to b3, attacking d5. So black defends, obviously, and now white's plan is simple, to play bishop to d1 and try and go for h5. So bishop f7 is played, and the point is that now black is in Zugzwang because white plays bishop f3 and attacks this pawn. But if this black bishop now moves this way to g8, white will play bishop h5, and also the bishop for black can't go away from protecting this pawn. If the king moves as well, bishop h5 can be played, or king to g5. So black is forced to move a pawn, and Stockfish plays a5. But now they've actually created another weakness on b5 for themselves. And Leela exploits this nicely. She plays bishop to d1. And again, black's still got to guard this square from the white bishop. So Stockfish plays bishop to e8. Leela plays bishop to e2. A very clever move. So instead of playing bishop to e2 straight away, she plays it in 3 moves, because now it forces black again to play a move and the ring Zugzwang. So they've got to defend this pawn. They can't move off this diagonal, so the bishop can't really move. If the king moves though, bishop h5, or the king will come in again for white. Black can't push this pawn because it will get taken twice. So potentially black could have played a4 actually, which is probably one of the only moves. But I think Leela still wins because they can play bishop to f3, attacking the pawn. If bishop f7, they play bishop to e2. Black can defend the pawn, but then Leela can just play a move like bishop to d1. And the point is it just waits. So if the bishop goes to c6, white can play bishop h5. If we just go back, if bishop f7, white can play bishop to f3. And the point is, again, black can't move off this diagonal because then the bishop will infiltrate, and they've still got to protect this pawn. So the king is just going to come up for white's next move. So back to the game. Instead of a4, black played bishop to d7. Leela plays bishop to f3 to attack this pawn. And now they play bishop to e6 to defend. But we've just learnt that now black has moved away off this important diagonal. So Leela now exploits this with bishop h5. Prepares bishop to e8, and this is very bad for black. But black still holds on for a few moves with bishop to d7. But now white can attack bishop f7, attacking the pawn. Bishop c6 is the only move. And Leela plays bishop to e6, attacking the pawn. So black is forced to defend with the king. And they play bishop to c8 from Leela, which just really limits the white squares that black can move to. If king f6, then white can come up with king h5. If bishop e8 check, they can come up again with bishop c6, king h7, king f7, king h6, king f6. Then Leela can actually play bishop to a6, and if bishop e8, bishop to b7. The point is that black's just in Zugzwang after bishop a6. They've got to move the king again, at which point white can just play king to g5. So after bishop e8 there's bishop b7 attacking another pawn. If bishop f7 to defend, then they can play bishop c6, and white's going to win this b5 pawn. Very nice. So back to the game. Bishop c8 has just been played by white. Stockfish plays bishop to e8, and Leela plays it nicely. Bishop to b7 attacks this pawn. Bishop f7 defends, but Leela can play bishop c6, and black's just lost a pawn, and that's very important. Again, black can't push this pawn because then takes and takes, and they're going to queen this b pawn. So black played king f6 in the game. White plays bishop d7 first. King goes to g6. Leela puts their king on g3 and then f6 again. And finally she does take the pawn on b5. And Stockfish plays king to e7. So it's still not easy for white to win, but after king h4, king f6, Leela plays bishop to e2, bishop e6, and actually she's come off this diagonal again. So white can move their king up to h5, the bishop goes to c8, king h6, bishop e6, and bishop f3. So now black is forced to defend this pawn and can't move away from this diagonal. So bishop to g8, bishop h5 again from Leela, bishop e6, king h7. So black moves the bishop once again, but now Leela is infiltrating with king to g8. And she's found the right idea, because after king e7, she plays bishop to f7 and attacks this d5 pawn. So black's got to defend. They play bishop c6. Leela puts the king up to g7, but now it seems as though black has lost this game, because Leela's plan is simple. They're just going to try and win this f5 pawn. So bishop a8, king g6 attacking the pawn, a4 from Stockfish, and just bishop g8 moving the bishop away from the king. And now there's no way to defend f5. Bishop c6, king takes, and bishop b5 from Stockfish. Bishop takes d5 and then king to d6, and this is easy win now for white. They play c4. The bishop moves with check, but after a few more moves this is an easy win for white. And I won't bore you with the next few moves. Leela just cleans up, takes another pawn, and eventually gets a queen. So she gets a queen, gets another one for Bance, and then cleans up with king and queen checkmate. And Leela wins another game against Stockfish. So what an amazing game. I thought this was a rather instructive one for once, because it just shows how you can win an endgame with the same coloured bishop against pawns. So if we just go back to this position, this was a very nice demonstration from white of how to win this endgame. Just put black in Zugzwang and exploit this h5 weakness from black using all of black's pawns. So the bishop is just too overloaded for black to defend the pawns and also defend this key square. So it was amazing technique from Leela. But anyway, hope you enjoyed this video. Drop me a like, comment or subscribe to the channel, it really helps, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video with more Leela versus Stockfish. See you later.